In today's tutorial, we'll learn how to create a basic compass in Unreal Engine 4 and we'll style it to look somewhat similar to the one in Hunt Showdown. In addition to the compass, in the future I might make a marking system with waypoints, so let me know if you'd like to see that. If you want to learn more about Unreal Engine 4, how to make games using it and all types of game development related stuff, start right now by subscribing. Lastly, big shout out to all the patrons that support me this month. And now let's get into this tutorial. Unlike most of the tutorials on this channel, this one is going to start in Photoshop. And in fact, most of the tutorial is going to be inside Photoshop because we will have to set all these elements, all these UI elements for the compass right before getting into Unreal Engine 4. So here on my screen you can currently see a template for the compass, right? So this is a PSD file that is going to guide you where you have to put your cardinal points, such as north, southwest, southeast, whatever else you want to put in there. So for example, in the middle, here at the red rectangle, what I'm going to do is to get my text tool and then type N for the north point. Size is going to be for me 240 and the font is going to be Optimus Princeps semi-bold. Okay, select the move tool and move it downwards. And now you will need to make sure that this is centered on the red rectangle. So usually you are going to have this purple guideline, but if you don't have it, what you can do is select the rectangle and while pressing the control button, go to the rectangle in layers and click on the image. And now select again your N, then with the move tool, go and click on the align horizontal centers. Nothing is going to happen for me because it is already centered, but it should work for you. Okay, now I'm going to deselect that and I'm going to copy this text. By pressing Alt and Shift I can move it upwards and I'm going to duplicate it, and now this one is going to be a number that is going to be 0 and the size 180. So the north is going to represent the point 0, and for example the south can represent another number. We are going to set those later. First let's see what else we have to do for the north point. Okay, once again make sure that this is centered, and it is for me because I only dragged it on the z-axis, right? That means upwards. Actually not Z but Y. Okay, and now everything is done right. What we have to do now is to hide this rectangle by selecting it, going into the layers and then clicking on this eye. So now it's hidden. So now we know where the north point is and what coordinate it has. Right? So now what we have to do is to continue creating points, south, south, east, and so on. So I'm going to do that real quick. After about 3 minutes, I'm done. I have all the numbers set and all the cardinal points from north, northeast, east, southeast, south, and so on. And here, as you saw in the beginning, I'm going to have the north point, and then everything is going to go from north to south and then back to north in increments of 45. So you can see 0, 45, 90, 135, 180, and so on, right? Make sure that you do the math correctly because at some point here I messed up and I had 250 instead of 225. Right, so make sure you don't mess that up. Okay, as well, you can download the guides from the description below. There's going to be a link to the PSD file. And one thing to remember is that this might not be the perfect template for a compass, simply because I had to do it and maybe there are some mistakes in there from me not paying attention or whatever. The human mistake, human factor, you know it. Okay. So after we set up everything, what we'll have to do is to select each layer with the marquee tool. So in order to do that very easily, we're going to press Ctrl, Shift, hold them, and then select each, click on the icon of each layer. So let's do that real quick. And then we are going to need to check, just make sure that everything was selected. Okay, and now the letters. Okay, and finally the rectangle in the middle, which shouldn't be hidden, it should be visible. Okay, so let's make sure we selected everything, and it seems that we did. Okay, now let's go to channels and create a new channel, which is going to be entitled Alpha 1, because this is going to be used, as the name says, as an alpha channel. Now let's go to the brush tool and start painting. And if you don't like the brush tool, you can use the bucket as well to instantly fill everything. Okay, now let's deselect and make sure everything looks fine, it seems like. And this is pretty good. Now let's go on and save it, and we are going to need to save it as a Targa file, and then we will need to import this into Unreal Engine 4, but before doing that, we will need to create 2 more UI elements. The next UI element is not going to be something too complicated. The size of the canvas is going to be 8000 by 450, the same size as the compass. So what we'll do for this one is going to get the brush tool, we're going to get the color black, create a new layer, and now we are going to start painting with the black color. Hold Shift and paint from top to bottom. Keep doing that, right? Just do it until you think it's fine, and then you're going to see that there's a kind of a gradient here, which is exactly what we want. Then we need to duplicate that by pressing Ctrl and J, then Ctrl T to for the transform tool, then right click and flip horizontal, press enter. Now let's move it on the other side. We are going to have the same effect on both sides, and this is going to work in combination with the alpha mask of the compass. So we are going to combine those so the compass is not too big on the screen. And now we have to create one more element. That is going to be a cursor, which is going to represent at what cardinal point we are looking right now. So this one is going to have the size of 512 by 512, and it's simply going to be an arrow that points upwards. So let's go to layers, create one more, and now we will need to go to the rectangle tool, make sure you have no stroke with the fill black, and let's create a perfect square by holding Shift and dragging the mouse around. Let's make it pretty big. Now we are going to have to rotate this 45 degrees, so it's going to look like a diamond. Now we can also see it a little bit down, so it fits the entire canvas. Okay, now let's go to the rectangle, right click and go to rasterize layer, because we will need to delete half of it. So we'll go here, get the marquee tool and select half of it. Okay, then go downwards, and now you can see that half of the canvas is selected. Press the delete key, and now we are going to build off with a triangle. Let's duplicate this by pressing Ctrl and J, and let's size it down with the transform tool. Okay, if you want to see how it looks right now, let's get the color red. Now we will need to center this on the other triangle. We can do that again by going to the icon of the triangle, holding Ctrl and clicking on the icon, then select the smaller triangle. With the move tool, go at the top and click both lines. Okay, now I think this is still too big, so let's make it even smaller. Don't be afraid to make it too small. You can always change it back later. Now let's select the smaller triangle, then make sure that we select with the marquee tool, as I said, by pressing Ctrl and clicking on the icon, then go on the bigger rectangle and press the delete key. Now if you are going to hide the smaller triangle, you can see a hole in the middle. This is exactly what we wanted to happen. Now what we have left to do is to delete this part right here that doesn't have a gap. And of course you can delete other pixels as well. Here at the top you can see I didn't select it perfectly. It doesn't matter, we can always resize it later. Delete. Okay, and now let's make this a little bit bigger and also center it on the screen, and let's also make it white. It's very important to make it white so we can play around with the color inside Unreal Engine 4, so you can give it a tint. By having the black color, there's no way of us doing that. Let's go to color overlay and set this to white, and then let's also hide all the other channels so we only have this part right here. And now let's export all of these into images. This one is going to be a JPEG, this one is going to be a Targa, and this one is going to be a PNG. So here we are in Unreal Engine 4. The template of the project doesn't matter. So the first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to create 2 widget blueprints. First one is going to be called widget underline HUD, and the second one is going to be called widget underline compass. Let's also create a folder and call this compass. And in here we are going to import all the necessary images for this tutorial to work. So with all of them imported, we have to make sure that none of them have minmaps and the texture group is UI. Create a new material, we can call this mat_compass. And the reason that we are going to do this is because an image is not going to be able to work as a compass. We need to have a way of changing the rotation of the image. So the first thing that we'll do is to go in the main material node, go to material domain, user interface, and then go to blend mode and select translucent. Let's drag opacity and compass inside. The first thing that we'll do is this, to set up opacity. For that, we are going to multiply the alpha channel of the compass with the RGBA from the opacity image. Plug this in opacity. And now what it does is that it is going to combine the alpha of the compass. So we are going to be able to see all the letters, the rectangle in the middle, and all the numbers. But then where it's going to cut, the image is going to be cut, there's going to be a smooth gradient, so it's not all of a sudden. Okay, now let's plug the RGBA pin inside the final color from the compass, but before closing this down, let's set up the UVs. So we'll get a texture coordinate, then we're going to get an add node, and we can already plug this in UVs. Then let's get two constants, both with value 0, and append them, and then plug this in the B node. Let's convert the first constant to a parameter and call this offset rotation. Okay, still with value 0, and basically what this is going to do is that it's going to rotate the texture based on the rotation of the camera, of the player's camera, right? So whenever we are going to move left to right, this is also going to move according to that. Let's save. Okay, let's close this down and let's go into widget compass. Let's go to fill screen, go to custom, and the width for me is going to be 2040 and height is going to be 120. Remember, these numbers can also be played with, so if you want something bigger or smaller, or if you have another image of a compass, whatever, that is going to work as well. Let's first add an image in the canvas, and let's go to anchors and select the bottom right one. Now let's set all the offsets to 0, and that is going to fill the entire canvas, which is exactly what we want. For the brush, in the image, what we'll do is to go and select the material, and click on the arrow, and now you can see the compass appearing on the screen. You can clearly see all the numbers and the letters. You can also see here the gradient that I was talking about. If we were to go to the material and then instead of having the multiplication here, if we save this and now go back, you're going to see how this is going to suddenly be cut here at the end. And we can also see southwest, something that we couldn't before. But that's not what I want. That is going to be too big and it is not going to look that nice. By doing this, we are going to have a smooth transition. Okay, now let's add two more images. Actually, let's first set up this one and then we are going to duplicate it because it's the same. Let's go to the cursor image and plug this in the brush. The size is going to be, it has to be the same on the X and on the Y. Let's see, 400 by 400 might be too big. Yeah, 100 by 100 maybe. And we will have to place this right under N. Let's make sure it's centered with the 0 and then just drag it down. The anchors are going to be in the middle, and then let's duplicate this. Make sure that it's also centered once again. And let's set the rotation angle to be 1. Actually, I meant to say 180. Right, so it's completely upside down. Let's set the size to be 150 on both axes. And as I said, we will need to play with the tint. I want to give a red tint to this arrow. Okay, I'm going to desaturate it a bit. And that should do it. And again, if this were to be black, the original color were to be black, then this wouldn't have worked. So you need to make sure it's white by default. Let's make sure it's centered once again. I'm going to check with the other one here. Okay, and that should be it. And now I'm going to go to position Y and drag this upwards. And that should be just fine. There's nothing else we have to do in this widget. Let's close this down. Okay. We might come back to it to set up the offset parameter, but first let's set up the widget underline HUD as well. Let's go to user created and then go to widget compass, add this at the top, and now we will have to scale this. The size is going to be 2040 and the Y is going to be 120, and that should do it. And now make sure that the arrow is not going to be right at the top, but still centered, and that should be just fine. Let's compile and close this down. Then let's go to first person HUD or whatever HUD you have. Let's get begin play, create widget. Okay, the class is going to be the widget online HUD, and let's add to viewport. Compile and let's play. And now you can see the compass at the top. Right now it may be too big, maybe the arrows are too big as well, but of course this is not what concerns us currently, because you can always go back and resize it. Now what we have to do is to set up the actual compass to work, to rotate according to the camera rotation. So let's go back in the widget compass and go into graph, and this is the last thing we have to do in the blueprints. First thing first, let's delete event preconstruct and event tick, and let's only leave event construct. Let's add a set timer by function name, and the function name is going to be called update compass. Okay, let's check looping, and the time is going to be very small. So this is going to update very often. Of course, for this you can also use event tick because it's not that big of a blueprint, but I really don't like using event tick, so I recommend using the set timer by function name. Let's add a custom event, and it's going to have the same name as the function name. Let's rename it. Okay, and now what we have to do is to get the image. Actually, I'm in the wrong blueprint. Let's copy this, delete, and go in widget compass. Alright, and what we have to do now is to get the variable of image 19, which is the compass. So select it, you'll have here highlighted in variables, get it, and now we are going to get dynamic material. Then we are going to set scalar parameter value. The parameter name is offset rotation. Let's check once again just to make sure that you're getting it right. So offset rotation. Okay, and the value is going to be the control rotation on the z-axis divided by 360. So get player controller, actually get player character, then get control rotation, split the struct pin, divide the z by 360, and then plug this in value. Okay, and now if you ask why do we divide this by 360, is because if we set this to 1, it is basically going to have the same position. If we set this to 0.5, it is basically going to be rotated 180 degrees. Let's save everything, compile, close it down, and let's play. And now you can see the compass moving. You can see if I'm moving to the right, I'm going to get east. Okay, now south, right? Exactly 90 degrees from the last position I was in, and then west as well, and so on. And what you can do to make this even better is, of course, add more cardinal points, add more UI elements, right? And because I'm no artist or anything like that, you can probably make the compass even better than I did. And that's everything we have to do in Unreal Engine 4. If you have any questions regarding the tutorial, let me know down below and I'll help you out. If you want to learn more about Unreal Engine 4, how to make games using it and all types of game development related stuff, start right now by subscribing. Big thanks to Donald Anderson, Kamasutra Industries, Daniel Moore, Bruno Gomez, Stefan, Badral Kaktani, and Roduk for supporting me this month. As always, the project files will be available for Patreons over Patreon. Thanks a lot for watching the video until the very end, and I'll catch you in the next one.